Prabupada, Lilamrita, chapter 2. In my first year, I studied English and Sanskrit. In my second year, Sanskrit and philosophy. Then philosophy and economics. Another professor was J.C. Springer. He was professor of English literature. While teaching English literature, he would give parallel passages from Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Yes, he would say, your Bankim Baba says like this. He had studied Bankim's literatures and he compared Bankim Chandra Chatterjee to Walter Scott. In those days, Dickens and Sir Walter Scott were two very great English literary men. So he taught us those novelists, and the relationship was very nice. Abe became a member of the English Society and would recite Keats, Shelley, and other poets to his classmates. As a member of the Sanskrit Society, he recited the Gita, and some of his fellow students especially noted how eloquently he recited the 11th chapter describing the universal form of Krishna. He also played soccer and took part in theatrics. Amritlal Bose, a famous organizer and director of theatre in Bengal, rehearsed Abe and a group of his classmates in a drama from the life of Lord Chaitanya. Since Chaitanya Leela was available in the public theatre for a half a rupee, Mr. Bose argued what was the need for an amateur production, and his answer was they should appreciate your performance of Lord Chaitanya so much that after seeing it, they will agree never to sin. The eminent director was volunteering his service and training these boys, but on one condition they would not perform publicly unless he said the production was perfect. For more than a year, Abe and the others rehearsed the Chaitanya play until finally their director allowed them to stage a public performance. Abe, playing the part of Advaita Acharya, noticed that many people in the audience were crying. At first, he could not understand why, but then he realized that because the players had been well trained and because they were sincere, the audience was moved. That was Abe's first and last dramatic performance. Abe's psychology teacher, Professor Urquhart, gave evidence that women's brain paid less than men's. His economic professor lectured on Marshall's theory that family affection is the impetus for economic development. In Sanskrit, Abe used a text by Rao and Webb that described Sanskrit as the mother of all languages. While studying Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava in Sanskrit, Abe was impressed by Kalidasa's explanation of the word dhira, which means undisturbed or self controlled, according to Kalidasa. Once long ago, Lord Shiva was sitting in deep meditation because the demigods were at war with the demons. They wanted a commander in chief born from the semen of Lord Shiva. So the demigod sent a beautiful young girl, Parvati, to interrupt his meditation. Although Parvati worshipped Lord Shiva and even touched his genitals, he was not disturbed. His resistance to temptation was the perfect example of being Dhira. As the as at other British-run schools in India, all the European teachers at Scottish churches had to learn the local language. Once Professor Urquhart walked past Abe and a group of students as they were eating some peanuts and talking together. One of the students, speaking in Bengal, made a joke at Professor Urquhart's expense. To their surprise, Professor Urquhart immediately turned to the jokester and answered in Bengali, and Abe and the others felt ashamed. Bible study was compulsory. The Bible Society had issued each student a beautiful bound Bible, and each morning everyone gathered for scripture reading, prayers, and hymns. One of the professors criticized the Vedic teachings of karma and transmigration of the soul. In a court of law, one cannot be persecuted for a crime unless there is a witness. Similarly, he argued, although according to Hindus, the soul suffers in his present life for the misdeeds of his past life, where is the witness to these misdeeds? Abe was displeased to hear this criticism and he knew how to refute it. But being only a student, he had remained silent. Socially, he was inferior, and a student had little scope of challenge a professor. But he knew that the professor's argument against karma was insubstantial. He knew there was a witness. Some of the students, having come to Calcutta from small villages, viewed the big city and the presence of so many Europeans with bewilderment and timidity. But to Abe, Calcutta and the British were not alarming, and he even held a certain fondness for his Scottish teachers. Although he looked up to them with a mixture of awe, distance, and some tension, he admired their moral uprightness and their gentlemanly, courteous behavior with the boys. They seemed to him kind-hearted. The governor of Bengal who was Scottish, once came to Scottish churches, college, visiting all the classroom. The rooms were large, holding 150 students, but Abe had a front row seat and got a close look at the famous governor, the Marquess of Sutherland. The school operated on the principle of strict social distance between Europeans and Indians. Even the Bengali faculty members, being of a supposedly inferior race, had to use a faculty lounge separate from that of the European professors. Part of the college syllabus was England's work in India by M. Ghosh and Indian. The book elaborately explained how India had been primitive before the British rule. Abe's economics professor would sometimes shout at his class when he became frustrated with their slowness, addressing them as representatives of the whole Indian nation. He would say, "You should never expect independence. You cannot rule. You can only work like asses. That's all." College life was demanding. No longer was Abe free to spend hours before the deities of Radha and Govinda early in the morning. That had been a boyhood luxury when he would daily pass hours in the Mullik's temple before the golden form of Radha Govinda, watching the pujaris as they worshipped the deities with incense, flowers, lamps, musical kirtana, and opulent prasadam. As a child, he had played within the grassy compound of the temple or watched the men cooking kachoris on the roadside or bicycle or flown his kite with the Bhavatarini. His life had always centered on his home at Harrison Road, his mother's talks, his father's worshipping Krishna. These scenes were now past. Now he spent his days within the compound of Scottish churches, colleges. Here there was also a lawn and a garden with birds and even a small banyan tree. But instead of worship, there was study. The atmosphere at Scottish churches was academic, and even the casual conversation among the students as they gathered before the notice boards at the main entrance or passed in groups in and out of the main gates was usually about class assignments or collegiate activities. Jadi, Krishna.
Mataji, we may not have to summarize for 2 3 minutes going forward for everyone. Maybe we just, if you have any realization for 30 seconds, you can do it.
Can you repeat, Prabhu?
If you have any realizations, we can tell for 30 seconds, Mataji. Otherwise, we can move on to chanting because it's only a thing for the past time. So,
Okay,
able to
okay, then we can
summarize.
move to chanting, Prabhu.